Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of the Level Up Hour here on OpenShift TV. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV, and I am joined by a bevy of Red Hatters this morning. But the Red Hatter with the most right now is Langdon White, the illustrious one. How are you this morning, Langdon?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yes, I'm Langdon White, and we are excited to invite some guests today. But we're gonna, hit those slides, and then I can never remember how we do it the best. Hit the slides.
Let's do intro and then slides.
All right, so let's do intros
just so there's
first.
not people sitting here for no reason.
Exactly. So today we're going to talk about some of the kind of training department. It's always a hard group to kind of name, but we're going to talk about kind of what they do and why you might be interested in checking out what they do. But I also want to probe a little bit into how they do the job, because I think it's really interesting. So first up we have, I'm going to slaughter last names, so I'm just going to go with Michael and Chris. And
no confusion.
Yes,
just refer to me as Short,
right,
and we'll be fine.
Yes. Yes, this 6'4" short guy. And so if you wanted to go, and as we've discussed on the show in the past, Red Hat titles are a lot of fun and challenging. So Michael, what is your title, and who do you actually work for? What group do you work for?
Who is your daddy, and what do you do?
Because we changed the names of the groups and the titles and the stuff like every other Tuesday.
I don't know. I mean, I would say I'm a curriculum developer. My official title, I don't know.
That's
but
cool.
I'm part of the.
It's fine.
Yeah, I'm a curriculum developer, and I work for the GLS Global Learning Services. We're part of the curriculum team. So and that's kind of a large umbrella that involves the developers. It actually involves certification. But I'm one of the developers who works on creating classes.
Nice.
Cool. I used to be downstream of that. I used to be an instructor. So I was an instructor for 10 years. And so that kind of got me into wanting to switch over to this side. But yeah, so I'm a curriculum developer.
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool. Is that, just out of curiosity, is that what they call the same kind of job in other companies, generally speaking, or in your experience?
Is there a curriculum developer
industry
association or something, right? Like,
well, I'll tell you, I get a lot of things from LinkedIn looking for those type of people. So yeah, I think that's pretty standard.
LinkedIn, the one website I have open but muted at all times.
Right, exactly. All right, so Chris, how about you? Not Short. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm probably shorter than he is, but my name's Chris. My last name is impossible for me to say. My last name is Caillouet. You're not supposed to use all the vowels. Vowels are like a suggestion, pick one or two, but my last name has everyone, so it's not supposed to be said by a human tongue.
At least it's not Caillou, which is what I was afraid of, because nobody likes Caillou.
I've still got some of my hair. I mean,
right.
That little bald kid he's helped a lot of people pronounce my name correctly. So just add an X on the end and you're all good.
Right.
I'm also a curriculum developer within GLS, Global Learning Services, and a very similar on-ramp to the team, which was a former walk in life as an instructor downstream from Red Hat, a student before that learning from this curriculum. So kind of an exciting walk of life to weave into the creation of the content that helps on-ramp people for their careers or unlock new skills in these technologies.
I will say, all both joking and serious at the same time is like, one of the lovely things about open source, right, is if it's annoying you, if it's broken, you're the one who has to go fix it. So in other words, if you're taking a class and it's not everything you hoped it could be, you could go become an instructor, right? And then if that's not everything it could be, then you go and become a curriculum developer, right? So it seems like you've just been sufficiently annoyed throughout your career, is what I'm hearing.
There's a degree of honesty to that.
Yeah. All right, so now I'm going to share the slides, just to introduce the show. And they are, as always, an ugly.
They're not ugly.
they're very red for me. They're very red.
Well,
I mean, it is Red Hat. I agree. But all right. So this is the Level Up Hour, where we, generally speaking, talk about containers and why you might find them interesting or cool. But then we also randomly delve out into random other topics. For example, today's topic. Excuse me. But before we talk any more about that, we talked about it a little. I'm Langdon White. You can find me on Twitter at Langdon with one. And Chris is Chris Short. Much easier to spell, except that it has two S's in the middle for sibilance, is my theory. And we also currently run a Discord server, and you should join that if you want to kind of chit chat with us outside of the show. And you know, it kind of like every other, I think, communication medium, it kind of rises and falls about how much traffic is going on over there. But yeah, definitely check us out over there. And yeah, so that's about the show in general. A little bit more about the show in general. I really should move that first part of the slide to the prior slide probably, but if you want to know more about the show and the program that it's a part of, you should go check out red.ht/leveluphour, where you know, we actually have, and we're talking about training today, we actually have some access to some free training, or at least discounted training, as well as like some discounted or free licensing, you know, so there are some things that we deliver as part of the program that you might be interested in. I also understand, speaking of things related to the show, that we are, but I feel like I keep saying this, but the swag is about to land in the Cool Store. It has completely new color theme. We're supposed to be doing new slides to do the new color theme. So we're not going to tease it until it's available. So, right. You know, you heard it here first, but if you go check it out,
you've been hearing it here first for months. So
exactly.
But we are, like, I'm willing to say we are very close.
We are very close. Yes. So today we're talking about Certifying Container Pros, which is you know, a pretty good name for basically talking about how do you go through that kind of certification process, talking about it, maybe some training. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm interested in, like, how do you develop these curriculum, because or curricula, I guess, because I always find that you know, how people do their jobs interesting. So, and then we have show notes from last time in the usual place under episode 33, where we covered the recap of Summit and KubeCon EU. And don't forget, there's another Summit coming up in like 3 or 4 weeks. It's I want to say it's June 16th, rings a bell. So where there'll be more kind of in-depth sessions. We'll cover that a little bit kind of before and after. I think mostly after for this one. You know, but please feel free to let us know what you're looking forward to or what you might be interested in talking or like seeing there. And maybe we can talk about it in the episode like immediately before. We'll be dark that week though, like the rest of the channel, because we don't want to distract you from going to Red Hat Summit.
Awesome this time because it's actually breakouts and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much more kind of in-depth, deeper dive stuff, less keynotey. So yeah, definitely check it out. And that's it, I think, for the slides. Now I just have to find the window that lets me stop sharing. It moves around. If you have multiple monitors, yeah, it moves around, right? So you have to like hunt for it every time. So getting started, let's talk a little bit about you know, so one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about and is kind of new is do you want to talk a little bit about that learning subscription thing that's been going on, that's rolled out, or do you want to talk about one of the, yeah, like kind of what's the idea there, because I know we've actually been asked about it on the show before
a lot. Yeah,
I can jump in with that. So the learning subscription is, you have the ability to have all of Red Hat's courses available to you kind of in one package. And it's designed for, you know, a student who's planning to learn at their own pace. And they can jump in from class to class. And, you know, with that learning subscription, lots of the classes have videos. So there's a video classroom. In fact, Chris and I were both involved this week in filming a course called DO250. It's called the Open Practices for the DevOps Journey. And so classes get filmed, and if you prefer to have an instructor teaching you the material, again, it's video, right? But you've got that option. So, or if you prefer to just read through the content and then perform the exercises, that's your choice too. I think one of the great things about the learning subscription though is that you don't have to configure a development environment, right? So that's part of it. You've got access to each class has got its classroom environment that you spin up, and you can blow it away. You know, it's a sandbox, right? You don't have to worry about, am I screwing up, this server over here, and I've got to get that back. You know, so it's a complete sandbox. So
yeah, that is cool. I mean, even the reset on, like, if you want to do two different kind of training exercises, right? Even just that reset is often a challenge. I was just complaining actually about one of the cloud services that I used their command to create a bunch of stuff, and then I used their command as well to delete a bunch of stuff. I said create this thing, then I said delete that thing. And then the next day I was still paying about $10 a day for all the things it didn't actually delete, and I
know this cloud.
Not mentioning any names, but so why don't you tell us a little bit about like, how do you figure out what belongs in one of those kind of classes?
Sure. Well, honestly, that's not much. I mean, that's part of our decision, part of not, but each there's an architect in the case of OpenShift related classes. So there's our team's divided into different practices, we call them, and one of them's kind of focused on OpenShift, one of them's focused more on RHEL, one of them's focused more on developer type of activities, but each one of those practices has an architect, and that architect is usually the one who's getting information from the different business units and trying to figure out what the customers really want. But lately, there's actually been a lot of good feedback loop from the developers as well, where instead of getting a course where it's very structured at the beginning, we're trying to be more agile in that, and actually have the developers, as we do research, and we have topics in mind. This is what we'd like to cover. Let's see if that makes sense, or let's see if that takes us down a different direction. And in fact, so one of the courses I was just working on, and Chris is still working on, relates to OpenShift Container Storage, which has a new name, OpenShift Data Foundation now, right? So those names change, but
that's not hard on your videos at all, I'm sure.
But and then remember it. But it tries to figure out, well, what seems to be important here. And sometimes there's things that are easy to do, but that might not be the goal for it. So I mean, just as kind of an example with that, the image registry, right? So if you're dealing with OpenShift, there's an internal image registry, and in our classroom environment, at least in some of the classes we have, we just default to using NFS storage, right? It's a piece of cake to set up. It's not really recommended for storage, right? It's but for classroom environments, it's fine. However, if we have a class that's dealing with storage, right, you'd really want to set up storage where properly, right? And again, you could create. I mean, you might use block storage with just a different persistent volume, and that's easy. But if you're using maybe an object bucket claim, that's a little bit more tricky. And so, I had done the initial research. I'm like, boom, we can get this done with just kind of switch into a different persistent volume. Yeah, no, that's not what the architect wanted. Which again, it was tough. It was tough trying to figure out what did I need to do. But in the end, that's what's going to be. That's what the student hopefully is going to want to see. It's tricky a little bit, but we've got some good instructions on how you can get this configured. And so that's right now, a lot of the courses, they're taking a little bit more of that agile approach where we've got the ideas and here's the things we'd like to cover. And then we start doing our research, trying to figure out, can we make this work? And there's times where we'd like to maybe do one thing, but the environment might be prohibitive of that. Speaking of the learning subscription, in the past, OpenShift 3, that was pretty easy to set up. If you wanted just to create a sandbox environment on your own laptop, you could spin up a couple of virtual machines. It didn't require that many resources. OpenShift 4, that's a little bit different, right? That's a lot harder to create just on your laptop. And so, some of these environments, we've got, I don't know, maybe 3 master servers, 3 infrastructure servers, 3 additional worker nodes. So they're fairly big clusters that would be kind of difficult to, kind of play around and set up with on your own. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like whenever you're doing something that is like kind of sufficiently difficult, in these kinds of environments, they're very hard to replicate, right? Because it's like, if I want to go learn about the storage stuff, right, the last thing I want to do is configure all the stuff before I even get to the storage, right? Because that's going to take me, 3 days of just setup time, of all the rest of it, right? I'm just kind of pulling a technology out of the hat there, but just the last thing I want to do is like, before I can actually investigate it, I've been working on a problem like that right now where, basically I have pages of notes about just getting the setup to get to the point where I can actually do the stuff I'm trying to figure out. And conveniently enough, there's nothing like training for that. So one of the things I was going to comment on though is that and maybe Chris, I don't know if you want to comment on this here, but I would still imagine that there's a lot of I don't want to say latitude, but it's kind of the same problem you have or not problem, but flexibility you have as like a software developer, where as a software developer, I get from my technical lead or an architect or whatever, I get here, build this thing, right? But then I have to use kind of my own expertise to know kind of what to, in the training sense, what I would say is what to gloss over and what to really delve into. But in software development, I mean more where to focus my profiling effort, So, is that a similar experience? That's kind of what I was getting at, is how do you make those decisions?
It is a similar experience. We are afforded time and access to a breadth of resources. So Michael mentions the architect who sets a high level bar of the kinds of topics we want to address. Gaining that wisdom from reaching out through business units, customer experiences, feedback from other courses that may be related. Then we're giving a large amount of time, not a large amount of time, but a breadth of access to gain intelligence around that. We're oftentimes writing course content on things that aren't known. What are the best practices? Or we're establishing best practices by simply putting them in a training course. So we have to go out there and try these things in our own environments, massage those classroom lab environments to meet those needs. And then we start a feedback cycle, both with our architects, and Michael also mentioned the early access program, where folks who have joined the Red Hat Learning subscription with that access level can see that content before it's published as a full course and say, this is looking great. This exercise really hit the goals of what I was looking to gain in this particular skill on OpenShift. Or this is wildly missing the mark. I really wanted to see more of this. So we have an opportunity to listen to that feedback and then tune our content along those lines. Additionally, from the internal side, our architect and team members are listening to business trends, maybe some news that broke. We've heard of products changing names and whatnot. We have to be abreast of that, or what features may be coming up on the radar. Since our course projects, writing a single course, can take several months, you can imagine that some of our faster moving technologies like OpenShift and others could have a change in that period of time from when we conceive a course to when we deliver a course. And we have to stay on that cutting edge to make sure when we put something in your hands, it isn't stale the day you get it. Right. So that's the real benefit of that feedback cycle and internal connectivity that we have to be able to keep our courses fresh and the most relevant to our customer needs.
Well, this is I think that must be, I mean, you find this hard kind of across the board, right? And kind of one of the reasons I like doing the kind of streaming shows is that, the hard part about video is it's not uneditable, but it's uneditable, right? It's like, if you do get a product name change, right, you can't just go through and change the terms right in the video.
Me dubbing over other people is not going to happen. Sorry.
Right. Although that might be very, very amusing.
That could be funny.
But so I imagine like kind of keeping up with those videos, but it kind of leads me to another question, which is like how much kind of feedback do you get from people? And part of the challenge that you must be trying to meet or related to that is like different learning styles, right? So like, some people like me, for example, I actually much prefer text to most other communication forms, whereas I know other people much prefer video than other communication forms, and then there's even other people who prefer audio, and so how do you deal with that essentially?
I'd love to say it was something that Michael and I have all those skills sitting on our heads, but
yeah,
it'd be foolhardy not to mention the entire wraparound team of services that we have, from world-class tech editors to a team of titans in video editing. So in the GLS organization, we have the skills and professionals really targeting to make sure we have that on point. So I don't necessarily have to worry about my grammar. I should be good, and there's skills that these members of our team give to us. They run workshops to help us write clean and better prose. However, we always get to pass it through their eyes as a final checkoff. Right. Same with the video editors. I'll sit here and say it. Michael mentioned we're recording a course this week. There's no doubt that during that process, we'll get stopped, roll back. Let's say that again, a little bit different. And they keep in mind how agnostic we can maybe be to the content itself, so that may be a drag and droppable module to populate into other areas or other courses, so that they have a real skill for coaching us to record these things in the ways that make them a little bit more portable or easier to maintain for that freshness that we need with versioning and whatnot of courses and technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. For me, again, I think with the learning subscription, right? So that gives you the choice of which learning style works best for you. So if you like to read, there's the courses all there. So it's an HTML, and you can read through it and you can go through the exercises. If you're more visual in terms of seeing someone, maybe even auditorial, you can watch the video of an instructor presenting. They just recently they released what they called a premium version, which has all of that, but then also allows there's 3-hour segments with live instructors, where an instructor is presenting live and you can actually ask questions and get feedback in that respect. So I think the learning subscription is trying to address those different learning styles, and you can choose which route works best for you. I know for things that I'm fairly confident with, I'd rather read through it because I can skim through it. But sometimes I will watch a video as well. I want to see sometimes the tips that an instructor has. I mean, I know I've recorded a couple of classes, and something that I found as an instructor that was always beneficial was what were some of the tips, that maybe I found, or that students would constantly run into little problems. Chris Short, you had mentioned or when we were chatting about troubleshooting, right? So sometimes during those videos, I would actually be going through an exercise, and sure enough, things are gonna go wrong. And so those videos also give you the ability to sometimes see how is that instructor troubleshooting this particular issue. Maybe it's a simple thing, maybe it's a little bit more complex. So again, each one of those modalities can offer a little bit different style. And last thing to kind of say on that, as Chris mentioned, there is a group of people besides the developers, and one of those key people is an instructional designer, right? So that instructional designer is trying to look at the whole picture, and does this make sense from an instructional standpoint? Regardless of what the architect wants to put into it, does it make sense from an instructional standpoint?
Interesting. I think part of what's really interesting for me for this is like it's always fascinating. Like I can't believe how many different like role types there are. I mean, it's like as soon as you say one, I'm like, oh, of course, that makes sense, right? But kind of looking at it from the abstract, I'm like, oh, there's just, this person who puts the whole class together. And also kind of I've been doing a lot of kind of work with Boston University. So like, there's a lot of students, we talk about classes or we talk about like learning new things or whatever. And, and I think in the vast majority of cases, I think a lot of those professors, kind of do the whole kit. But it seems like, but I know they have support infrastructure as well. And it's just kind of interesting how to think about like, are there there really are different skill sets in there, and much like talking about programming again, right, it's like much like programming, having one person who's able to do all of them is pretty rare. And sometimes it also means that, or generally means that, they are also of like medium quality at all of them, right, excellent at none. So it's kind of interesting to see the specialization kind of within that world. So why don't you tell us a little bit about so the show focuses primarily, and we've talked about this before, I know, but I'm going to kind of reiterate it, but it focuses primarily on, in a sense, why containers are cool. And so in other words, like, I, imagine if I was a, kind of a RHEL admin, and I think that, and I keep hearing about this container thing, but don't really care because I need to run my servers. And I argue that you should care anyway. And the reason is because of things like application containers, making a container available throughout your data center that has like all the tools you prefer, those kinds of things. What would you recommend for somebody in that scenario, for a class or training exercise or whatever, to be able to adopt containers in their like day-to-day work?
Sure. I think it's important. You mentioned, what if I'm a system administrator, but I'll take it a step back further, which is, what if you're just that system administrator's manager? We have veins of curriculum that get you all the way through the I've heard of containers but have no concept, to take you through a conversation about what does a company's transition to this adoption look like. A managerial perspective or a business perspective on that is where our curriculum introduces these topics and then continues onward. The enumeration of our courses, DO 180, 280, 380, much like college courseware, indicates that progression of knowledge and skills that are logically followed, or at least from our opinion, would follow one to the next to progress you through the skills. But the on-ramps of vocabulary and just mindset have to be in place before you really start running commands on the command line. From there, once you feel comfortable with the concepts, we move into courseware that puts you right into lab environments so that you can get your hands on the keyboard in an environment already built for you, like Michael mentioned about our custom classrooms per course to meet the needs, so that you can then follow along in either the whatever modality, the written word, an instructor teaching this through a video format, or even sign up and attend a virtual class if that's your learning style, where you have the interactions in these classrooms to deploy a cluster if you're at that stage, or even just deploy your first container in an OpenShift cluster if it's something you're really novice to or new to. We like to explain these from the bottom up with no assumed knowledge. An OpenShift course is going to require you to know some RHEL, some Linux backend skills, but we're going to try to make that bar of entry as low as possible so you can really just focus on this new skill you're trying to pick up. If you understand that containers and container adoption and infrastructure administration on OpenShift is the way you want to take your career, I think there's a great journey you'll follow course to course to get those skills in a bite-sized fashion. And with the RHLS, revisit the parts that didn't make sense, or even consume them in multiple modalities. Maybe you learn best through text, but on this topic, it's challenging. You pivot and you also watch the video, or maybe rewind and do it again until that skill is stuck before progressing through the course or even into the next course.
And that's typically how I learn, right? Like the text, and then, oh man, this doesn't make sense to me. Let me go watch the video, right? Like I pull the video out as like, I need somebody to actually give me the example. So it's great that there's multiple modalities like that. It really is.
We try to eliminate the need for you to consume our knowledge and then wait, I still need a backup YouTube video, or I've got to go find somebody's blog before this ultimately makes sense. So we try to include all of those different ways you could consume it into the one portal.
And what about kind of, so, obviously any individual class can only cover so much, right? Like, what's your kind of recommendation for, like, if you want to kind of widen that knowledge? So, like, okay, so I think I got a good idea of like how to execute a basic container, so I can go forward, right? I can go kind of those higher number courses, but if I want to go slightly kind of wider, I mean, like, I guess what I was kind of wondering, because I think I think there's like kind of like a community around this where I can go and maybe say, hey, I thought of this thing, which doesn't really seem to be covered because I think it's bizarro land, not because it's like an expansion, but like there's a community there too where I can kind of go and talk to people about it.
There is. I'm trying to remember the URL. I don't know if I can't remember if it's learn.redhat.com. Right?
Okay.
So learn.redhat is referred to as the Red Hat learning community, and that's where and pretty much any course that you get into now, it's going to provide that URL for students as kind of a place where they can network with other students, ask questions. Instructors are typically paying attention to that. Some developers are, right? So sometimes it will filter into developers. Having been a former instructor, I still get a lot of those emails. So as things get posted there, emails get generated. And so I'll see those and sometimes respond to those directly. I wanted to jump back though. You'd said why containers maybe, and I'd say that's the direction things are going in a lot of ways. I think back with when RHEL 7 came out, right? So we had for a long time, and it still continues to be a big a bunch of training is RHEL curriculum, right? And there used to be a track system administration 1, 2, and 3. And when RHEL 7 came out, there was maybe at the very end of the system administration 3, maybe like a paragraph or two about containers.
A casual
like,
reference.
Hey, it's like, hey, these things are kind of new, and we think it's probably going to take off, but we don't really know. I mean, there's no hands-on activities for it, but it's kind of just almost a passing reference.
Just stick with Chirut. Fine. Yeah.
and then it got pulled out, but that that portion eventually disappeared. But that was at a point where RHEL training was maybe 95% of what the training was. OpenShift training is now maybe a third of the training. And it went through some revisions, right? So we had a atomic host at one point, a class on atomic host for containers, and at one point there was maybe just one OpenShift class that kind of dealt with installing, and it was more administrative focused. But now, I mean, Chris, I don't know how many classes we have now, but I'd say there's probably at least 10. If not more OpenShift classes, and it's taken about a third of the training. I guess another kind of along those same lines. So as an instructor, there was always a yearly instructor conference, and most of the instructors, their bread and butter was teaching RHEL courses, right? I mean, that was the bulk of the courses, and every year it was like, come on, you guys, let's, learn containers, learn Ansible, learn these other things. We know that these other courses are gonna start picking up, and it was pulling teeth, right? Sometimes it's tough to venture off into something new when you're comfortable doing what you're doing. I don't know that I'd want to be one of those instructors that only knows RHEL right now, especially if you're a contractor. That pool is going to get tight. There's the number of classes has switched over to a more
I think your headset's dying or something.
Yeah, we just lost sound for you.
We lost your audio.
I was like, is that me?
So I can finish this sentence.
There we go. I like this.
That would actually, let's do that. I think, Kristen, you need to take over right there while Michael tests.
This headset needs more coffee.
Yes.
Now losing his train of thought, I guess I should say. I think the point is, industry as well as curriculum is drifting into containers. And there's no shortage of demand for the OpenShift courseware. People are growing these skills, moving from that traditional system administrator into these newer roles and newer spaces. And what's nice is our curriculum stays both on the cutting edge, and we maintain that catalog of courses. As the courses expand, it's daunting for us to version bump up every course in the catalog, but we take on that task. So that's one of those challenges on staying on that bleeding edge is if you're going to expand your courseware, which is what your customer wants, you also need to maintain all those courses out in the wild.
Right.
In doing so, we've also gotten the iterative opportunity to inject that knowledge in other waters. In the RHEL courses, you now see an adoption of some Ansible practices and use cases, as well as mentions of containerization and using OpenShift or seeing those CLI tools that bleed you into that next tier of life. Maybe you're hyper-focused on learning some automation skills with Ansible. Well, if you went through a RHEL course and saw that course journey all the way through to completion, it gives you a good clue and a good footing to then branch out into Ansible or branch out into a learning journey in OpenShift. So we do a pretty seasoned job, thanks to the experiences of a team that's been around about 20 years, of understanding what the business has to offer and how to incorporate that in the learning journey for someone who is maybe today learning Linux for the first time, but wants to see that career progression beyond, well, now I'm a certified engineer. What's next? The career keeps going just like the course journey does into these newer technologies.
But even the RHEL like training and certification stuff, right? Like that's all got containers in it now, right?
Especially with the Red Hat architect level, certified architect level, where you get to go cherry pick some technologies to expand beyond the engineer to really hyper focus on what's more important in your walk of life. You can learn an array of you can gain an array of certifications out of our courseware to form an architect certification, and that can include specializations and things of any nature of our products. But we have injected in even those system administrator courses in RHEL. Yeah, Ansible.
I think number 2. I think sysadmin 2's got that content now, container content now. So that's it never used to be there, but we found that this is a core thing that administrators should start knowing. So it's gotten pushed into. I think it's sysadmin 2 has got that content now.
Well, and like what kind of one of the things like like training and certifications, right? It tend to be on the follower side of a technology, right? Like there's no certifications out there for quantum computing, right? Or maybe there is, but I wouldn't bother with them. Right?
I think IBM has something, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So there probably is, but I mean, like, who's going to ask me for a quantum computing certification, right? Whereas, but I think like you're like having a certification out there, having training out there really is a ratification that this thing is probably here to stay, right? It's not, this is not a fly by night or attempt at a technology that looks cool. We've had many of fits and starts, Red Hat included, even myself included, in things that we've tried to pull off, and it just kind of haven't materialized. But you don't put the effort into creating training exercises, creating, training content, et cetera, certifications, generally speaking, unless there's something there that's quote unquote like real. Honestly, quantum computing is actually probably a bad example just because it's actually been around as a concept for 20 years or so. And so it's a little bit weird. I was trying to think of some other, like, what's new hotness that's probably not going to stick, but those are always hard to predict. Hence the point, right? So I think, at least your team, right, really feels like this container stuff's probably going to be a thing. And the technology's been around for at least 20 years. It was just, we never really had a good, basically, it never had a good entry point for most people. The widest usage was probably using RPM build, which is kind of amusing. But okay, so I always like to kind of also say, like, all right, so let's ask Chris first. Like, what do you think our audience kind of, so mix of, sysadmins, developers, looking at containers, looking at orchestration. What's the biggest thing about containers and orchestration or whatever you think that people should know, or like people should go and, what's your, big tagline about why containers, or why, or what is the tricky parts or something along those lines?
Well, I think what I would say to that is tying back to the thoughts you just had before about how, containers have been around for a while, but we've really hit a moment in time where scale is affordable to really appreciate what a container can do for you. Mm-hmm. And I think we see it in enterprises because we're Red Hat and we consult with large entities, but the startups I know of are out of the gate going with a containerized approach, hoping they become the next billion-dollar juggernaut, but they'll be prepared to scale easily. And that skill alone, being able to take a business idea, deploy it in any environment and scale it affordably, is a skill any administrator, any technologist could appreciate. Even a business mind, someone leading a business should be familiar with this concept so that they understand the best value they can get for the dollar out and return on investment when you're writing an application and giving it out to the world. I think doing it in this, we'll call it a new way. If the technology's existed for a while, that's one thing, but the new way being the adoption of that technology.
Right.
I think that's going to be the key to success for so many people trying to get the next 20 years out of their career. If you look at somebody who's been a paper tiger in certifications in Microsoft for a while, now's the perfect time with all the clouds out there to pivot and learn how to run containers in whatever flavor of cloud they want. And I think they extend their life of their career for another 20 years. At least because of the future road that I see containers taking. Right now, we talk about the journey of adoption, but the journey of conversion will be a much bigger deal when companies say, okay, this VM bare metal deployment we have is just untenable in a modern time, whatever they make that decision. So let's get on board with this. And at that point in time, it'll be to how do we take an app, re-architect, and then deploy and scale in this new way. And that's the skills that exist in our courses for years now. And we're seeing a huge surge towards with the kind of content we're creating and being asked to create from the community at large now.
So, one of the things I wanted to kind of just jump on there for a second. So a lot of the time, I think any people who work at enterprises or in enterprise, right, or even like medium business, right, whenever they hear the word startup, they get nervous. But the thing to recognize is that the techniques that a startup is using are applicable inside your medium-sized business all the time, right? And so my stupid example of this is like one of the organizations I consulted to would crank out a new movie website every 3 months or so, and they did them on I think they were Drupal, and basically they just had to crank it out. It was a very low edit, low change functions, right? It just basically put up the the trailer of the movie, and whatever the crap was on there. But that's a perfect opportunity for something like containers. But it like that little, like if you had built that as if each one of those was a little startup in a sense, that would be a perfect opportunity for all of these very cutting edge techniques by dropping the effort for any individual movie website to the level that it deserves, right, which is kind of a near zero, right? And so I think that's so don't, I guess what I would caution is like take everything what you said, which I completely agree with, but it doesn't have to just apply to like some early stage company. You use a lot of those same techniques. You see them all the time. You just kind of have to recognize them for what they are. But I think that's overall, I thought it was a great point.
Yeah, I think the startup gets to stand on the shoulders of giants that technologies discovered from the juggernauts who were asking for more or better or faster or cheaper. They get to adopt it right out the gate because they're new kids. But the enterprise is going to go through that journey. It's just a bit more timely and has to be a bit more planned because they're an evolution stage as opposed to an inception stage.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. So same question to you, Michael. So, what do you think is like the big thing that you would like people to take away about, why containerization and or kind of like what training and certification is important about that for kind of the audience that we have?
I think part of the takeaway for me is think about updates and security, right? I mean, how many times have you talked to someone who's like, no, we don't update our servers because we don't know what's going to break, right? It's working now. Yes, there might be security updates. I'm not going to apply them. Yeah, I mean, updates with containers, oftentimes, especially if you're getting a container coming from Red Hat, right? Or maybe you're using the universal base image. These are getting updated for known issues, right? If I'm a web developer, I don't necessarily care, right? I don't care about how that's getting set up. I want my container to be secure, or if I'm legacy architecture, I want my system to be secure, but I don't want to have to worry about that. If you go to the container Red Hat's container registry, one of the things that you'll see is that each container gets ranked, right? It's going to have a letter grade, and you're going to see clear visibility. Are there known issues? And what's surprising to me is that it doesn't usually take very long for an image, which was an A rank, to get down to a C or a D. Sometimes it's only a handful of months. That's surprising to me. But when it was
lost the sound again.
When it was really hard to do, then Mike again.
God.
We heard that.
Well, that worked. Let me know what kind of headset you're using so I don't buy that one.
Or is it
all of our meetings, I have never had problems, and this twice, right? Twice, for crying out loud.
Michael's the gold usually he's the gold standard.
Gosh darn it.
Right. It's gotta go with my wired
stuff always
zero
breaks when you're live.
I don't know.
But I hear you.
But yeah, maybe you heard part of it, right?
Or maybe just give us the last sentence,
But I think the rating or the rankings of containers and seeing how frequently those change. If you're in charge of updating your systems, are you updating it with that cadence? If you're not, there are security issues, right? Whether you're dealing with a physical system or a container, that again, that could be problematic for you. And again, as a developer, I don't necessarily care about that. I want it to be secure, and I don't have to worry about getting those images patched. So I might build a new container where it's going to pull the latest image, where those base container image, where those issues have been resolved, at least for now, right? A couple months later, that image will have maybe some other issues that will be discovered.
Conveniently enough, thank you for the segue. On the 9th of June, so it's like 3 or 4 weeks from now, we're actually having the team from the Health Index on the show
Nice.
to talk about like how it actually works underneath. But yeah, that's one of the things I think is really one of those kind of bites you later problems with containers is yes, it's immutable. Oh my God, it's immutable, right? Is the challenge is that you do have to maintain that health. And I think that's, when you go and just read the blog posts on the internet of how awesome containers are, they kind of gloss over that whole like maintenance component of your application in a container, because there's so many different variables about that. Also talking a little bit about the afraid to update your servers, speaking from personal experience, I took over a data center for an organization. Some friends of mine had started working with the company, and I was afraid to install Puppet at the time because it was basically the only one available out there, because of like what it might do to the server. So I would do updates, but and so I ended up writing an Nginx plugin that would actually do updates as if they were Nginx checks. Not Nginx, Nagios. So it was horrifying, but like that's like the perfect scenario. Like this containers make all that kind of stuff so much easier because you can have a golden record, right? You can have a golden image that you regularly update, and then you can roll out, and you start looking at, this is really where the orchestration stuff starts coming in too, right? Is you can roll it out in a canary way and like actually test it and stuff. And so you can have this kind of like relatively managed environment that's way less keeping you up at night, I think, because it's just doing its thing rather than being constantly like. I think most content, except from like operating system people or whatever, is like it's very point in time. It's like you never have to worry about it ever being changed again. It just will magically happen somehow, or because it's coming from developers who are like, yeah, I'll just delete it and write a new one. It's like me. All right, cool.
What's nice in the OpenShift space is the deliberate intention to develop those features. The automatic updating and security awareness, alerting and monitoring on that is really deliberately built in, and it is included in the training as well, how to leverage some of these features. But the motion of OpenShift development is to make those tasks either obvious or automatable in the future. So that's what's great, is the hard and daunting parts are becoming easier in a container world.
Yeah. And I really think like, even when you're like, there's different scale levels, right? And we can do a lot of stuff with Podman. We can do a lot of stuff with Ansible plus Podman. And we can do a lot of stuff with OpenShift, and different scales require kind of different levels of input on that particular application, or a particular goal. Like, I think this is the other one of those things that people don't talk about enough, is like, there's a big, huge difference between 6 or 7 nines of uptime and 2 nines of uptime. Do you really need the 6 or 7 nines of uptime, or would you be actually like my movie website example? It's like, is 2 nines plenty? Probably. Like what happens if the trailer, if the trailer site goes down once, every so often, so what, people will just reload it, or you're going to miss 2 people. So, but obviously it's just my opinion. You have to evaluate your own scenario to think about that. And it's just make sure you're actually evaluating it realistically versus just kind of at random. All right. So do we have any questions, Mr. Short?
No, but the chat has been lively about various things. Playing Risky mentioned something that he's doing where he's basically just, as new ratings come in for those containers in their environment or a previous environment he worked in, he would have it auto set up to trigger a rebuild of that container once this, everything was patched and everything. So we're kind of going through like, how did that work out in the conversation right now? But like, that sounds like an amazing strategy. We do also have a question.
Just to comment on that though, you got to be super careful about that, because part of the upside of a container is that it's not changing. So you want to make sure that the thing that you're deploying is actually something that you've tested again.
Yes.
This is where things like service mesh, right?
Yeah. Your pipeline has to be configured. Your deployment strategy has to be robust, right? Like there's a lot of things going on in that process prior to you just adopting and throwing everything in, like once it's updated.
Just straight up updates. Yeah.
That's going to lead to some interesting problems for you. We have another question from Jitendra, but I'm going to answer that offline.
Okay.
So yeah, Jitendra, I'm going to come back to you on that.
Cool. All right. So why don't we jump to the sweet internet points, and then we will come back and get and see if there's any questions in the meantime. And if there are not any questions, then we'll kind of do a little bit of a closing and call it a day. All right, so gonna share my screen again. Eventually once I find the correct button.
The button hasn't moved in a year, so.
Yeah, but I move the window around.
I know.
So, that way I can kind of look at you all instead of off to the side, which is when I put the video in the wrong place on the screen, it makes it
look over here like
great. Yeah. So sweet internet points. So we've had
explain to our guests what these are.
Yes. So the sweet internet points is a way for people to gather points for coming to the show. That's the primary mechanism people generate points for. Another way is to make suggestions for content for the show, and so you get some points for that as well. And the way you do that is going and filing an issue on the GitHub repo. And let's see, another way is actually to make an edit, like a pull request against the show notes about the show. So if you want to contribute anything like further reading, or if you notice a bug like the one I had from last week, which I put in the wrong date for when the show aired, stuff like that. So that's another way to earn points. There's a few others on the activities page, which let's see, do I have the link? On the actual repo, which is, sorry, loading. I will throw that in the chat. So that's that basically has a list of kind of different ways you can get points. And then there's escalators. So once you've watched a few shows, you get some more points as well. Excuse me. And so, so then we just kind of present the leaderboard, and we sometimes do some shout outs to people who have participated in the show, or who are new to the show. So we have a little bit of that today. So it's just a fun little thing we do to, kind of help engage with our audience, so I highly recommend it. I would really like to see, all my, I would like to get my training points. So let me know when I can get sweet internet points on the training website. That would be kind of cool. So, certifications, those are kind of like next level internet points.
Right.
It's like
those
that's
are official internet
internet points or something. So Narendev with 5,400 points, Netherlands Hackham with 5,100 points. I did notice, so one of the things I would like to point out, I fixed a few people. Please be very careful with your email address, because if you type it in incorrectly, it will find you as two different people, which in my opinion is not a bug, but it is something that periodically I go back and check to make sure that it's correct. So I found that a little bit today. So if you see a little bit of weirdness in the points, that's why. So no friction with 3,900 points. Joe Fuzz with 2,300. Detective Conan Kudo, 2,000 points, and Bacon Fork with 1,700. I would also like to give a shout out to Sloan, was their Nick, who I don't know if they're here today, but they submitted for like 4 or 5 of the early episode shows in the last couple weeks. So they've been going back and rewatching shows. So just keep in mind, if you don't have all the points you can get, but you want to get more, you can also go back and rewatch old shows and basically take the code that's here, and it will be, it's still valid. You can just kind of reuse it whenever you're ready. So that is the internet points. I was just looking to see. I don't think I have this conveniently off to the side. Let me grab the link so that you can, so people can submit. Usually I put it off to the side. I just forgot. So. Yes, Rapscallion. The codes stay up. They remain valid. If they are not valid for some reason or another, let me know on Discord. It's a bug, but they are there. And yes, we would all like to buy sweet internet points shirts, and we are promised very soon now.
Are we going to make a request for a sweet internet point shirt after the show now?
Now that's, I don't think we actually have an actual internet points shirt.
Like we should get like the Level Up Hour on the back and just like sweet internet points and quotes on the front.
And can it come with a kit of like iron-on numbers so you can put your
real score on there? Nice.
I think that would be pretty awesome. Yes, but we very much want to as well. What we really want to do actually is we want to send you free stuff based on your internet points. That is the biggest gate, not to mention some vendor changes and things like that from our swag providers.
There's a lot going on at Red Hat. Right
it's
now.
Like,
let's just put it like that.
I don't understand how we went out of our way to make this so hard. But I just work here. Thanks so much for participating. Go grab today's points. If you go to the YouTube playlist, you have a fancy bang command for that, right?
For just the archive?
No, the archive of the show, the playlist.
Oh, the show? No, I need to
Oh,
do
you don't?
that.
Oh,
Yeah,
shoot.
like
Yeah,
I
wish
have an
happened.
archive for the channel, but I will make one for the show after this. Bobby, take a note.
Yes.
So, let me grab the playlist real quick for everybody.
Oh, okay. I was looking forward to, but so yeah, if you go back and watch old episodes, you
Mhm.
can, you can catch up to everybody else who's there.
Yes.
And I think Narendev is primarily in the lead because of show idea suggestions.
Mm.
And Netherlands Hackham is kind of done his differentiation actually around doing a pull request a while back
Nice.
with some code changes. So yeah, so participate and there's more points.
Grabbing the playlist. Hang on.
Thank you.
Stand
Thank
by.
you.
I gotta find it. There's a lot of playlists now.
I know. It's like
Level Up Hour. Where are you? There it is. Copy. Paste. Yay.
Yay.
I did it.
All right. Did we have any questions in the meantime?
Oh gosh.
Aside from swag and shirts.
Jatendra, if you didn't see the link, I added you in. Let me know, and I will follow up with you. As always, you can reach me short@redhat.com if you have any questions. Just ping me via email or on Twitter @ChrisShort. Looking through, doesn't look like it's like some people have signed up for learn.redhat.com already, which is awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll hack them. Found the playlist. Good job. Yeah, no, it doesn't look like there's any points, but thank you to everybody for participating in the conversation today. We already have over 100 chat messages, which is an astounding achievement for one show. So that's awesome. Thank you, everybody.
And very few flames. This is even better. So let's kind of turn it to Michael. Hopefully your sound will work. Do you have any closing thoughts you wanted to add in?
No, this was fun. This was fun to be a part of.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, I appreciate it. You mentioned somebody in chat went to learn.redhat.com. Low barrier of entry, free. Get in the conversations. You can get a lot of wealth of knowledge there, and then see what course is right for you to step into an actual courseware for your learning journey. I think that's the best way to go figure out where you need to be to calibrate your own conversation. We're all in unique spots in our careers. It's been a pleasure chatting with you folks too. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. And, do keep in mind, for everybody in the audience, right? If you are watching this live and you think of something later, you can always come back to the show. If you're watching this in some future history time, you can always come on the show. We do the show every week, and feel free to ask us questions. And if we get enough of them, we'll ask these guys back, or we'll ask some of their colleagues back, so we can get some different faces to come on the show. So we can always cover it again if there's something else that comes up that you didn't think of right now, or occurs to you at 2 a.m. tonight, or occurs to you after you play around with learn.openshift.com or the learning subscription. But definitely check it out. People learn different ways. If you're having trouble getting your head wrapped around this container stuff, try something like training. Other people, just it's not just the gurus, right? Don't just learn by reading something and putting all the pieces together all the time, right? Sometimes having an instructor kind of explain it is a good idea. So just kind of recognize your own kind of learning modalities and and experiment. If you're not sure why you can't get your head wrapped around something, sometimes it's the way the content's being delivered as much as it is you trying to understand it. So that's my kind of closing pitch for experiment with how you learn things. You don't always find the right answer for the right subject the first time out. So Chris, you want to tell us a little bit about Mr. Short? Sorry, about what else is going on the channel? Or
yeah, absolutely. So check this out. There's going to be an episode called Splat and the vSphere Problem Detector. I can't wait to bring that on, because I literally had to ask Andrew, what is Splat? And that's all going to be explained. It's explained on the calendar. So if you're not a subscriber of the calendar, let me drop you a link to it so you can go in there and look.
Yeah, and don't forget, actually,
Yeah.
We will say, definitely, joking aside, like and subscribe to the channel, the show,
Yeah, wherever you're listening to it,
because that's how we get, the ability to continue to run the show, right? Is that we can show how many people like it.
And then at noon today, we've got a special OpenShift Commons briefing with CyberArk. So getting, IAM working with CyberArk, that's going to be fun. And then we have a special Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents. We're actually going to be talking about like the file system and the structure of Linux and like that standard and then where to find things and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a busy day here on the channel.
That is a life-changing piece of data if you don't know about it.
Yeah, so
the LSF is amazing.
Yes, the Linux file system standard is awesome.
Yeah, and if you know it exists, it makes your brain hurt a whole lot less about why things are arranged the way they are. Yeah, highly recommended. On this show next time, we're gonna take another swing at Docker Composed Podman, which I actually thought was going to be this episode because I got them totally reversed, and then had a massive panic attack last night at like 9 o'clock and was like, oh my god, we're doing the wrong show. I'm very excited for it because I was all teed up to do it today. So it will be next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel. And thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, we really appreciate everybody joining us today. Thank you very much to Michael and Chris.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone in chat that has been watching and interacting today. We really appreciate y'all. So stay safe out there and we'll see you next time.